Hello, my name is Matthew, and I read Don Juan by Lord Byron. I finished it about a week ago. It's been raining here, and I'm in a little tiny house with a tin roof, and it's very loud. And I had been still thinking about this book and decided, even though it's not completely fresh in my memory, I would spend some time talking about poetry and Lord Byron. For as much as I talk about the books that I'm reading, mostly novels, some nonfiction, I read a tremendous amount of poetry. I read poetry pretty much every day. It's part of my morning routine. I don't make videos very often talking about poetry. I find it difficult to articulate, and it's also for as little as I talk about books in real life with people, I do not talk about I do not bring up poetry. It feels very personal. It's a way for me to maybe palate cleanse my mind before I start my day, just to think about things outside of myself, and to read things that are beautiful and strange and otherworldly. Sometimes little everyday details that are just eloquently and articulately put in a way that kind of embeds itself into my brain for the day, and allows me to think about things other than going to work and taking care of the cats and what am I going to have for lunch or dinner. And with all that being said, this is a large volume. It's maybe 500 pages. It's a long poem, I should say. It's in the model of an epic poem, but it's a satirical epic poem by Byron. And before I talk about the book specifically, when I think about epic poetry or just poetry in general, maybe I go to certain works, certain authors, certain personalities over and over again. When I think about my favorite books, maybe I've read my favorite book 6 or 7 times. Maybe I have favorite books I've read 3 or 4 times. Books I've read twice. Books I really liked that I've read once. But there are poems that I've read maybe 100 times, dozens and dozens of times. Poems that either as a whole or certainly passages or lines that I know by heart. The distinction that I would want to make is that it's not that I memorized them. It's that I've spent so much time with a certain poem or poet that it's just a part of me. And instead of learning by rote is the distinction that I mean to make. Now, Homer, the Iliad, the Odyssey, these are 2 epic poems. Sometimes I refer to them as books, but these poems that I have read, I've read the Iliad and the Odyssey maybe close to 10 times, maybe more, for the better part of 10 years. I've read them annually, and I read different translations. There's a new translation of the Odyssey coming out. I should have it delivered on Wednesday, which I'm very excited about. And I can relate to these English translations. Now, something like the Aeneid by Virgil, I have not taken to either the Aeneid or the Eclogues or the other pastoral poems. There's just something that feels very wooden in the English translation. But what I am told is that, and what I've read, is that it's the stylistic wonder and magistry of what Virgil is able to do in the Latin language, which is a language that has, from what I understand, has tools that allow it to do things that are not available in the English language, namely the removal of the utility or importance of word order. And so you can have these Latin verses where you can read everything and the very last word can completely upend and reframe an entire passage. I have no idea how that works. My mind can't wrap my head around it. When I read Horace, I love reading Horace. I've read he's more of a recent poet that I've discovered and fell in love with. The satires and epistles and odes and things like that. But when I read the English translation, in verse or in prose, I think to myself, like, I understand why it's so entertaining, but how could a poem about someone in the city wanting to be in the country and someone in the country wanting to be in the city, or someone inviting someone to a dinner party, or being upset and complaining that a tree nearly fell on him and killed him, and just not seeing how that would be ringing in a Roman's mind, as if it's a song that they can hear. Now, I do have there are examples, many more than I know of, but when I think of examples in the English language, such as Chaucer, the Canterbury Tales, maybe Paradise Lost by Milton. Actually, I have this right next to me. The Fairy Queen by Spenser. And this is a very old English language, historically. So I can read it, but it is difficult. When I pick up the Fairy Queen, there is a level of intimidation. The words are graspable, but still slightly alien. I can read Chaucer, but there is a mental energy that I haven't tackled the language, grappled with the language to the point where I feel familiar. All of that said, now to get back to Don Juan by Lord Byron, one of the things that I was thinking about reading this again is the second time I've read it cover to cover, although I do go back to cantos or certain passages fairly often, namely the second canto, but it is just a mesmerizing magic spell to fall into this book. And one of the reason I bring up all of this stuff about Homer and Spenser and Chaucer is, for my money, this is the earliest example of a big English language epic poem that I can read completely fluently. There's no boundary, there's no space between me and the work, the way that with Homer, who I get along with, or Virgil, who I do not, there's the intermediary of a translator. When it comes to Chaucer or Milton or Spencer, now there's no translator, but my own comprehension is now the intermediary. So it has a special place in my heart that I feel like I can pick this up and really hear Byron. And when I mentioned the idea that in Horace, I can read it and find it very entertaining, but in translation, I just can't wrap my head around why it would be so memorable or so beautiful. And the answer to that, for me, is Lord Byron, is Don Juan, in the sense that the way that I hear or have read that Virgil can really stretch the limits of what Latin can do, I find that in Lord Byron and Don Juan. Just this like high wire, incredible performance of what the English language can do. And there's the story, there's the plot, there's all the things that happen, but the fact that there's a very Lord Byron puts constraints on himself in the way that he's going to format the poem. It's octava rima, however you say that. So the rhyming goes A B A B C C, and he takes this very constrained, formalized structure and goes on for hundreds of pages, and it reads so effortlessly. By page 400, 450, Byron is still inexhaustible. It just seems like he can pluck words out of thin air and just place them where he wants them, as if the English language is bending to his will. It's incredible, sheer genius. And all the while, on top of telling the story, on top of being satirical and being funny, being topical, being scandalous, all the things that are in this book, the fact that Lord Byron's personality is on the page with those constraints in place, and it can go on for hundreds of pages. It's amazing to me. It's the kind of book that I just don't understand how it could be done. It's just that impressive. Now, the book is very funny, which I'll try to get to. And it's, we have our main character, Lord Byron says, "I want a hero." And it's Don Juan, and he has a series of adventures. Maybe a good comparison would be something like Candide by Voltaire, where Don Juan is constantly getting himself stuck in these predicaments and then getting thrown out of a country. The first two, the second canto, the first canto is sort of a scandalous love affair, which is a theme throughout the book. The second canto I go back to so often because it reminds me it's a seafaring maritime story. It's brutal, it's scary, it's exciting, funny, but it's just a ship lost at sea. And Don Juan is there, and his tutor, and his dog, and the other shipmates. But maybe after Canto 6 or 7, the book widens. I should have said that there are two main characters in this book. There's Don Juan, who actually is quite a rather passive figure. He's just thrown into situations. The other character, who is prominent at the beginning, but only becomes more and more prominent, kind of swallowing the story, is Lord Byron, is the narrator. I had just read Les Miserables and Notre Dame de Paris, and there's the commentary often mentioned of the digressions, that there's a story and then Victor Hugo has his digressions. Well, Lord Byron takes that. Lord Byron is either a contemporary or precedes Victor Hugo, so I'm speaking flippantly, but takes that idea and just maxes it out to 11. Lord Byron is on the page. Lord Byron is talking to you. Lord Byron is full of big opinions. Like someone said, I can't remember who, but one of the people in his social circle described him as mad, bad, and dangerous to know, which I absolutely love that line. And after 6 or 7, where we kind of have a story that we're following, Lord Byron just cracks open an entire universe. It's no longer that we're just following a character on a series of adventures. That becomes the digression. And now it's just Lord Byron, center stage, full of confidence, the English language bending to his will, and he is talking about every subject. He's talking about literature and journalism and life and death and religion and philosophy and war and travel and just like an endless list, where Lord Byron will even say, like, let's get back to this other guy, and it's unfinished. The cantos go along, and they're almost like it's almost like a serialized novel, where each canto will have its own arc, and then there's the overall structure of the book. So although it's unfinished, it doesn't leave you unsatisfied. Narratively, it leaves you unsatisfied because I just don't want it to end. I love reading Lord Byron. I know this could seem intimidating. It's a romantic English poet from a couple hundred years ago. It's a big, long thing. The more you know about Lord Byron's time and his contemporaries, Southey and Wordsworth and Coleridge and on and on and on, the more enjoyable and fun it is. He rails against Southey constantly, at least in the beginning, makes fun of Wordsworth, which I think is hilarious because from everything I've read, Wordsworth did not have a great sense of humor. There's one line at the beginning, paraphrasing, and he's talking about Coleridge, and he says, goes da 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 da, and Coleridge is busy explaining metaphysics to the nation. I just wish someone would explain his explanation. That's one of those things, like one of those lines that, for someone that reads Coleridge, just rings true in my heart. And the other amazing thing about the structure and his sense of humor, I suppose, sometimes humor is based on the surprise of things. And when you start reading it and getting into the rhythm, I can nearly complete the sentences. When you hear the rhyme, my mind is sort of kind of naturally going, okay, and then the rhyme comes and I know it, and the next rhyme comes, and then he'll turn it around and there'll be some very clever, unexpected word choice to punctuate the end of a stanza that'll be so surprising. I constantly would find myself guffawing and chuckling reading this book. It is very funny. The satire is closer to maybe like Horace or Juvenal, in the sense that there are real social observations instead of solely punchlines. If you're interested in reading Lord Byron, and maybe this is too intimidating, although, like I said, you can read the shorter cantos. A really good introduction to this would be Beppo, which is a shorter poem that has the same personality and actually the same rhyme scheme. Maybe also Manfred, but I mean, Lord Byron, there's hundreds of poems. So those are my thoughts on Don Juan, Don Juan by Lord Byron. If you've read it, or if you've read Lord Byron or the Romantics, please let me know what you think. So one of my favorite Romantic poets. Thank you for watching. Please leave a comment if you would like, and take care.